Live music means to me,
For me, live music is
Live music for me is just an incredible way to express emotions, feelings with and vibrations to other people, creating moods, creating vibes, energy, connection.
Live music is really the place where developing bands and bands that are trying to establish themselves in the music scene, particularly in Australia, basically it's the place where they can get heard and to develop a fan base and to gain followers and to demonstrate their music to audiences, which hopefully leads to future connections.
it means a livelihood. It means, the place where I hang out with my colleagues and my friends.
For me, it's my social life. A lot of it is going out, seeing bands, seeing friends that are in bands and whatnot, having a drink.
There's something really unique about putting something you created out there for other people to hear.
Live music would have to be my biggest source of inspiration. Going to gigs is really has been up until I guess this year really important for me to continue generating material, and also performing live makes me just so happy.
It's also kind of the inspiration and the lifeblood of my whole creative process.
It's where you see people kind of exercise their raw talent and hard work.
It's not just going outside or meeting people. There's something different about live music, which creates an atmosphere and an event.
And just have that community as well. I think in the community, for other bands, other musicians, that are doing the same thing. It's super supportive.
Something that's really cool about live music is that no matter how much music has changed over centuries, how we listen to music and how music is made, live music has largely remained untouched. It's basically just getting sound out to an audience. And I think the fact that it hasn't changed that much just sort of, shows it's such a kind of pillar of creativity.
Not having it at the moment has been pretty rough.
Yeah, look, I think the pandemic has kind of, presented these crazy obstacles that, we probably never would have fathomed before this year.
Personally, I found the first 3 or 4 months incredibly difficult to create. Like I was saying, without actually having a place to perform, I just found that I wasn't inspired to create at all.
I think that's the thing, when you have an end date, you can kind of organize it in a way that makes sense to your head, and it's okay, I've got 2 weeks, I can put this goal for in 2 weeks time to have all these little things that I hadn't finished, and then after the 2 weeks, then I'll be able to go to people to collaborate in person and then play gigs, but then it just that wasn't even a thing anymore.
I think a lot of my motivation comes from playing gigs and going and seeing gigs and things like that. So being in lockdown, it's been a bit rough on the old motivation scale. Sort of just what's the point? Usually we'd be playing a show every couple of weeks or test out a new song or whatnot, but at the moment it's a bit what's the point?
Our last gig was back in March, which was about 2 weeks or a week before the first lockdown. And ever since then we have tried using different ways of trying to perform. So we've tried it over Zoom, which was just a disaster. So we haven't been able to perform music live. And obviously, since we can't get together, we can't do a stream video on Instagram or Facebook or something.
Bands are doing it tough too. I mean, you can't rehearse. So you can only do so much over a Zoom meeting. It's not the same. I feel sorry for heaps of bands that put a lot of work in and getting, to get to a certain level, and even bands that just do it for fun. It's all gone, and they don't know when it's back. So, I just don't know what bands are going to be around like, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of bands are going to have probably broken up. I've heard of a few broken up already, and some decent bands. So that's probably just a product of the reality of isolation that we're all going through. You know, it's like, oh, what's the point?
Michael's in the third grade, he's having trouble breathing, thinking to himself that there's gotta be a reason he is the way he is, feeling the pain he feels like this.
I think the whole COVID thing has really opened up other problems that were there and have been there for a long time, which we didn't even think about.
I think the creative industries are, consistently left behind, and they have been ever since, I've been involved in it. And, my dad's been a professional musician since he was 17, and he says the same.
I feel like, and I've talked to a few of my friends about it, we're gonna be the last people to integrate back into society, and like we're like the later thought.
From what I've heard and from what I've experienced, like in my own music classes at university, where we've had established musicians come in and talk about their experiences, the government's really quite unsupportive of the arts right now, both state and federal government. Obviously, Daniel Andrews, a couple of weeks ago now, he released funding to venues. He released a whole list of venues, including the Tote and the Workers Club, which is fantastic for the venues, but musicians themselves, I don't think they've actually been receiving much support at all.
The federal government, they announced that huge arts package back in about July, and we're sort of still waiting to see how that's going to be rolled out. And I think the crux of the issue with the federal government's approach to live music and to the music industry is that they just, like, firstly, they kind of don't understand how it operates, and secondly, they have made the plan for like when we can have live shows again, but there's sort of no interim, and like we're staring down the barrel of another 12 months of all these people not being employed.
I think for small business and that, and I'm going to call musicians a small business or sole traders, there's just not enough support. And I'm a sole trader or a musician, whatever you want to call me, but I can't get any grants from the government because I can't even get JobKeeper, because you've got to go through this and that, and then jump through that hurdle.
So I think there was a bit of that previous to COVID. I think there was a little bit of unappreciating of the arts industry and the music industry, and this has compounded it a lot, I think, and kind of made music, and hopefully I think made governments and made the higher powers, I guess, think about this, that hey, this is, especially in a place like Melbourne, this is people's living, and this is people's income, and this is how people live.
I definitely feel, and a lot of people do, that we've been completely, considering Victoria, Melbourne's pretty much one of the live music capitals of the world. It doesn't seem to have bothered the government at all that it could be destroyed pretty quickly. So that's disturbing.
It's always been kind of that feeling that you're on your own. Even in groups of creatives, that I've talked to, it seems to be the same. This kind of feeling that the government doesn't really value live music.
The money that's been allocated it's not very much if you think about like the wider community of artists and musicians that are independent. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's very much, but it's hard to fight that when it's not an essential part of like living, even though that's kind of bullshit in my opinion.
It's really, really tough. You look at people who are kind of considering other career options, and that would be the greatest tragedy of all of this, is if we kind of lost talented, hardworking people to other industries simply because when they needed help most, they weren't given any.
well, I think we're pretty lucky in Melbourne that we have so many musos in Melbourne, so many creatives, so many just amazing people that are doing these amazing things.
And I mean, I've got musicians chomping at the bit trying to get into the studio to record. So a lot of my clients, I guess, they really love their music. So financially, they do want to do it, I guess, professionally, but it's more about the love about it as well.
I've got an album in recording at the moment, and I'm looking forward to getting into a studio when I can and working on that.
I've learned to accept situations as they come along. That's life. But I really miss performing live. I really love my audiences.
Hopefully capacities will potentially maybe get bigger and bigger. And then, maybe we'll get back to a standard, where we can fill the joint again.
I really want to enter live spaces, even if it's just like intimate backyard gigs just to start off, and then, gradually get bigger and bigger, just to play music with people or for people in any capacity.
I love performing in Melbourne. There's no issue there. So if I'm not able to perform overseas, it just gives me a different mindset about maybe I should go and perform. I've never been to South Australia before. I've never been to Western Australia. I'd love to open some doors and sort of, get to spend a bit more time, check out my own country.
I'm optimistic that by New Year's next year, there will be kind of, festivals will be back largely normal.
So yeah, I'd say first thing on my list is to hopefully at least play some gigs around the rest of the country, Australia, and when I can go to America and play some gigs over there.
Well, my dream now is just to go back to being a crowd of 10,000 and just fucking going for it.
When the opportunity strikes, live music is gonna be insane again, because people will be really wanting to put their all into it.